All righty. Having a few people come in. Just let you know we'll be starting in a couple minutes. We'll let a little bit more people get situated in here. So do you want to tell them an idea of what you're going to talk about?
Today I'm going to cover some things about multifamily. The common question I get asked, should I start a multifamily as a new investor?
Why'd you pick that topic?
Multifamily is loud and would like to share some hidden things that may not be taken into consideration when pursuing multifamily.
Thanks. For those of you who are just joining too, we're going to start in a couple minutes, just making sure we can let everybody in. We're doing these workshops twice a month. Then we'll be kind of just picking a topic, doing some of the Q&As, and then we like to do this. We're just going to commit to twice a month for now, see how much tractions we get. Maybe we'll do more. We post the times and dates and stuff like that on our Facebook page at W&M Properties. Where else do we post this? On our circle, but most of people find it on the Facebook page or the IG if you follow W&M Properties. Then you can get the next. We post them like a month in advance, so you can get the next dates, and then you can just register. If you register for the updates, then we'll text you for the dates for the next event, or we'll get you reminder emails and all that kind of stuff too. Yeah. I don't remember. It's mostly at the Facebook page, I think. It's tagged on the Instagram. Where's everybody from? You can put in the chat. I want to know if this chat works. How does it work? Put something in there, a comment. Make sure you guys are live. Listen. And for those who just got, I see the number of people going up. So if you just came in, we're going to get started in the next minute or two. Just making sure we can get as many people in so we can you can get what you came here for. So a little bit of knowledge and a little bit from someone who has a little bit of experience. Anybody from Hawaii? Maui. Nice. What about we've been doing a little bit more mainland in the West Coast. Anybody from the West Coast? Mostly Hawaii? Or just Maui? Just the one guy from Maui? All right. Oahu. There you go. Anybody come to these before? Or is this your first time? Cali. There we go. Big Island. Hey, everybody's from a different place then. Maui, Oahu, Big Island, Cali. Nice. First timers? Anybody came here for the first time? If so, how'd you find us? Hopefully it's on Facebook, because apparently I can only remember posting it on Facebook and Instagram. All right. All right, first timer. Very nice. How'd you find us? Oh, so let's get started then. My name is CJ Calio. This is part of W&M Properties. CJ here, I'm his wife too. We're started up these workshops where we're just giving information for free. We do a topic, get some. Then we do a lot of Q&A, ask whatever you want, figure out, give an advice wherever we can. And, if by the end of this, some one of you are going to want to do a little bit more understanding a little bit more mapping about your situation. If that's you, we'll open up some few slots, and then we can talk one on one. And some of you may not, and we can, you can always jump back on in the next 2 weeks. We have another one of these. We're going to keep trying to give value, answer some questions, and give you an insight on something that we've learned going through all the real estate that we've done in the past, and keep adding value. So, CJ, why don't you give them a little bit of background in case some of these are first timers? So, let them know who we are, not just someone from just wherever, and we can go into your topic.
Okay, put up my screen, please. All right, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us on our remote rentals workshop. We, like Jazz said, are doing this twice a month to add value. It's one of the things we were asked to do a lot of in 2025 that we weren't committed to. In 2026, we feel we've repositioned a lot of our resources and time to be able to add value to anybody and everybody who's willing to jump on and be a part of these workshops. Twice a month, join us on our Facebook page or social media on Instagram at W&M Properties. We will be posting those links. Once you enroll, we will be notifying you specifically around these events to remind you of the upcoming topics and dates and times. But before I dive into today's presentation, the hidden traps with multifamily, share a little bit about who I am and where we're from. And so I'm CJ Calio. I'm Jasmine's wonderful husband, born and raised from Hawaii, both of us. And I started off not in real estate. I was a UPS driver and by trade, and I delivered the packages. I was in the big brown truck, and Jazz was a mail carrier. And our jobs were really good, right? For Hawaii, union, stable, very consistent, good retirement, good medical, the whole nine. In one particular time of year during Christmas, I decided I didn't like my job anymore. I felt overworked. I was stressed. I wasn't seeing my family. I spent more time on road than I did at home, which is a problem because my kids didn't know who their dad was. And I had this brilliant idea of quitting my job, but I didn't have a solution. But Jazz did. Jazz was looking into multiple sources of replacing our income, and she dialed it into rental properties, not in Hawaii, but out of state, because the numbers made more sense and it produced cash flow. I took it like a champ. I was not on board. I did not believe in real estate, didn't know anybody in real estate, didn't understand real estate, didn't know anybody who was successful in real estate. So I did like a good husband would, and I shooed her away and said, go do it for me. That didn't work out well. And instead, I went and did things that I felt I knew or were comfortable with, like starting businesses, car washing, landscaping, house cleaning, things that I physically could do because I had such a limiting belief around this real estate stuff from afar. Well, lo and behold, like most startup businesses, none of them worked. They all failed. And Jazz was still dead set on real estate, and she was actually making progress. Well, once we got on board and I overcame my fear, in less than 5 years, we scaled to 90 doors and achieved financial independence for not just me, but my wife as well. And that's where W&M Properties came to be. The interesting part is when you achieve something like that level at a perceivable early age, people get curious about how you did it. And almost 8 years ago, we started up this community and this mentorship. And we've trained hundreds, if not thousands of people on how to do exactly that. And they're all in different phases, paths, and walks of life, striving for the similar goal of creating that cash flow rental portfolio so they have the option to work or not and to leave generational wealth for their family and their kids. Well, today's topic is one that was brought up to me several calls back where somebody specifically asked, well, what if I just go from no experience to multifamily? And I thought about it a lot because at first I thought the same thing. Multifamily is very appealing. It's very loud. There's a lot of people doing it. So why wouldn't I just start with that? And I believe my presentation will help you get some clarity around some things that you may have not even known. So today's topic is hidden traps in multifamily investing. My plan is to walk you through a case study to show you what this can look like in real life. This is not about saying multifamily is a bad investment. The goal is to help you understand what to watch out for if you're pursuing it for cash flow, just like our story. everything we've done in real estate is designed and focused around creating cash flow because that solved our pain point of quitting our jobs. The takeaway I hope you guys walk away with after the presentation is done is to be aware of the common pitfalls so you can make more informed investing decisions and know your true numbers. So let's start. I'm going to start off with a few common selling points that investors are often drawn to in the multifamily investing strategy. Multifamily properties tend to stand out because they combine multiple income streams under one roof. Basically, more doors under one roof could perceivably bring in more income, which can make them or the newer investor or investors in general feel more efficient and scalable compared to, say, the single family home investing strategy. On top of that, they're often marketed as a stronger cash flowing potential and more stability, which naturally appeals to both new and experienced investors looking to build or grow their rental portfolio. But multifamily does have hidden costs. And over the years of doing 90 plus stores originally in the first 5 years and hundreds of more after that, I've done multifamily as well. The multifamily properties also come with that hidden cost that investors who don't know what to look for don't account for them fully upfront when running their numbers because systems are often shared across multiple units like AC units and roofs and so forth. Maintenance risk can increase when something like that breaks. Since it may impact several tenants at once, that could change your performance due to inconvenience. Many properties also require a different type of property manager that you may use on a single family home because of the uniqueness of a multifamily setup, which adds to another layer of ongoing expenses because you're likely to pay a little bit more of a premium for someone to take on a larger multi with multiple doors. On top of that, common area places tend to be overlooked as expenses. Places like hallways, parking lots, or even laundry facilities, these essential things to multifamily properties can create additional upkeep costs that you may have not accounted for in the beginning. So in some cases, utilities and other services may also need to be covered by you as the investor or owner, which can further reduce your net cash flow compared to what investors initially expected or what's disclosed up front. So let's talk about a case study scenario. This is a very similar case study to something that's recently transpired in our community per se, where there was a fourplex that was purchased for $500,000. The total gross rent for this fourplex was $4,000. So if you take it at face value per door, it's about $1,000 a month gross per door on average to get that $4,000. Versus somebody who just did 4 single family homes at $125 a pop, same cost, $500,000, was generating a gross rental income of $4,800 a month. Sounds good. And the key word is it's gross. Gross meaning you get to account for expenses now. Let's break that down. For both investments with the same initial investment of $500,000, standard rule of thumb to help you generalize your fixed expenses is to just take 30% off the top. 30% of your gross rent goes to normal fixed expenses. That's taxes, insurance, and property management. That leaves you with 70% of the potential income or your net income before debt that you can account for and use that as a comparable. What the fourplex looked like was $4,000 a month. And if we took that standard 30% across the board as if it were a generic rule of thumb, we would assume that $1,200 of that gross rental income would come off for the taxes, insurance, and property management fee. That would leave the remaining income at $2,800 a month. But here's where things kind of shifted that the buyer wasn't fully aware of until too far gone in the transaction. There was additional cost to this fourplex multifamily. See, the appeal was I can get 4 doors on the one roof with one mortgage. Little did they know, they didn't have the foresight to ask the right questions around getting more information around the financials, which is very crucial in something like a multifamily. What they didn't account for was common area cleaning. That's hallways, right? Nobody rents the hallway, but everybody uses it. there's an expense to upkeeping and maintaining a cleanliness in your hallway to appease your tenants. There's also utilities. That's the outside floodlights. It's the porch lights. It's running the AC and the heating in the hallway so that it stays cool and warm in the winter. There's also trash services. Sometimes fourplexes don't have individual trash receptacles like a single family does. You need to outsource those trash receptacles. There's also landscaping in those common areas, those common yard areas that nobody's fenced in for. Well, who is responsible for that? Sure isn't your tenant. And most won't volunteer to do the work. So you as the landlord, you as the owner, get to take on that expense. And in some markets that we invest in, they get snow. So if you're from Hawaii, it might be a little foreign to understand that. And if you're stateside, well, maybe you've experienced snow. There are seasons where it snows, and when it snows to the point it needs to be removed so your tenants can actually get to work, that's on your dime. So those additional expenses took that new gross income or net income before debt, and you knock off another $1,000. All of a sudden, this fourplex that's supposed to be a massive cash flowing machine under one roof with stability is now turning into a less appealing investment property to start with. So $2,800, take $1,000 off. The final monthly cash flow before debt is $1,800. And we compound that. Say you're looking at a 8 unit or a 16 unit or 32 unit. Larger buildings often hide these extra expenses in their operational costs because they're purely trying to show you performance. Multifamily is often driven by performance less anything else. And they don't disclose that. You get to know the right questions to ask. So if you are fixated on multi, my encouragement here is to ask the different questions. Great. Taxes, insurance, property management. Got it. Those are your fixed. What additional expenses do you have that I need to account for? Can you show me your balance sheet? Can you show me your rent roll and your P&Ls for the last 12 months? These are little tips that you can get clarity around what your true cash flow is going to look like for something like this fourplex. Now, flip side, for single family home portfolio. Some might argue that's 4 individual properties, that's 4 separate roofs, that's 4 separate mortgages. It's not worth the time or investment. I just want the simplicity of one. However, if you're looking for cash flow, let's look at the numbers. The total rent for the 4 homes is $4,800, $1,200 a pop. Pretty standard for a $125,000 house in the markets we're investing in. Same 30% off the top, knocks it down to $3,360 a month. That's a lot more, right, than your $1,800 a month. And why it doesn't drop further is you don't have shared utilities. You don't have a common area to upkeep. You don't have landscaping to do. You don't have snow removal. Your tenant has their own identified trash receptacle for that single family home that they put under their name. There's a lot less overhead. So there's fewer operational expenses, which means you're closer to your true cash flow, even with the 30% scraped off the top, which then allows you to do what we encourage new investors to do, is to put away reserves. With the multifamily, in this case, the fourplex, there's not much to put away for reserves after all these expenses and additional expenses. With this, you have over double, or pretty close to double. You could put away half and you'd be equivalent to the 4 unit with the same amount of doors. So let's look at it side by side. Fourplex cash flows $1,800 after the additional expenses. The 4 single family homes, they may need 4 individual mortgages, 4 individual tenants. There's a lot less hidden cost to it. Generates, like I said, almost double. It's $1,500 plus difference. Same total investment, 2 separate vehicles. While fourplexes can look attractive on paper, they introduce several risks that can quietly erode your returns, like I've shared with you. Shared building systems mean a single failure can impact multiple units at once. Take a roof leak. If you got a 4 unit and you have 2 units upstairs and 2 downstairs, well, that roof leak could essentially take out your upper units and possibly your lowers too, which then takes your 4 performing units all out of commission in one crack, right? Versus 4 single family homes, one roof goes bad, you got 3 performers still. You're also multiplying the repair costs and the tenant disruption with multifamily versus the single. So common areas also create ongoing liability and maintenance and responsibilities that don't exist in a standalone home. What does that mean? Well, when you don't have fenced in yards and you have a multifamily building that has shared common yard area, does that allow you or your tenants to monitor who comes and goes? A personal horror story experience we've had is people dropping rubbish in our yard or large pieces of furniture that they didn't want to pay to have removed in the front yard of one of our multifamilies. Guess who's responsible for cleaning that up? Because the tenants were pissed. It was none of them, yet it's there. Who's going to take responsibility? The owner. So they don't necessarily do that to a single family home. Your tenant who operates a single family home will easily identify or notice if somebody's coming and just drop a sofa in their front yard. Versus a multifamily, do your tenants know each other well? Does the neighborhood know everybody well? You never know. There's so many bodies under one roof. Very easy to lose who's living here and who's not. In many cases, owners end up covering some utilities or services like I shared. You have your common area electrical, heating and cooling. You have your sprinkler water system for irrigation to upkeep the yard that is really nobody's as a tenant base. That all reduces, directly impacts your net income, which then takes away from your pocket money, your cash flow. Operationally, managing multiple tenants under one roof does add complexity and it requires more coordination. And there's more chances for things to go wrong when you're not a skilled or seasoned investor who knows what to look for to catch things early. These properties also tend to require larger, however, less frequent capital expenditures. A single family home roof would be a fraction of the price of maybe what a fourplex would be because of the size of the property itself. Or you have 4 HVAC units under one roof. That could be a very large expenditure if they all bust and crap out. Or if you have in some older units shared electrical, shared gas, one of those breaks, all 4 units are down, it's going to be a lot more expensive than when you're in a single family home. It can really create an impact on your cash flow instantly. And when it's time to sell, you have a smaller pool of buyers. Fourplexes are just a little harder and slower to move. So when you're planning your exit, which every strategy you do, you will want to plan an exit. The thing we like the most about the buy and hold for cash flow is it gives us multiple exits. And when you change vehicles from like a single to a multi, think of who your end buyer is. Multifamily properties don't typically sell to owner users. You have your outlier house hacker type of investors who would want to live in one unit and rent out the rest and self-manage. But really think about that. In your network, how many people do you know would be willing to do that and live like that to make a profit? I'd argue not a lot. So that does dwindle it down. It's also harder to sell because it's performance driven around the cash flow, right? And an investor like me and Jazz, we want to see positive cash flow. That was the whole point of getting into this game. And if your positive cash flow is less than 4 doors, meaning 4 single family homes, I might take the same $500,000 and go buy 4 single family homes unless you can show you've increased rent, you've increased performance, you've lowered expenses, which then takes a little bit more of a advanced skill set to do. So fourplex, there's risk, slower exit. Now let's go to single family homes. Carries similar downsides, and here's the upsides. By contrast, they're often much cleaner and more predictable investments to invest in. Your standalone property, tenant moves in, is basically responsible for all the things that your fourplex you are responsible for. It's an isolated risk. So if something goes wrong on one door, one single family home, it's not likely unless you own four doors in a row and God forbid a fire breaks out on one house and catches all four of them on fire. Versus if you had a fire in a fourplex, it's out of commission if it carried all the way through. Right. So it's an isolated risk. One issue affects one tenant, not the entire building. In my opinion, maintenance is simpler and it's easier to budget for. You just have a lot less moving parts to work with. You don't have shared systems or common areas that have those hidden costs that you don't really know what it's going to look like until you own it. Expenses tend to be more predictable. You have your heating and cooling, you have your roof, and you have your turnover. Basic things that you're going to focus on a single family home. Versus with a multifamily property, you have your porches, your staircases, your garage doors if they're enclosed parking. Like you have a lot more moving pieces, which makes it less predictable to prepare, and you may want to be more aggressive with your reserves. So when you have more predictable expenses, it helps you to stabilize cash flow over time quicker. And when it comes to exiting this type of investment, single family homes benefit from the largest, most liquid buyer pool in real estate. It makes it easier for you to exit and quickly sell if you don't like the strategy or if you're wanting to capture the market value increase because you've held it long enough while cash flowing. Then you can time your exit with intention. So what should investors learn from this entire presentation? Multifamily investing is not automatically better just because it has more units or higher potential rent. Doesn't make multifamily a bad investment. You just gotta account for the additional numbers that you may not be aware of that are out there. You get to ask those questions. The real outcome depends on the operating performance of the property. Too often, I see investors underestimate or overlook hidden expenses that can significantly erode or even eliminate your expected cash flow. And that's the part, right? You may not want to step into a multifamily deal on your first deal if you've never done it before. Maybe that's a goal you progress over time. That's why it's critical to model all real world operating costs in detail. Know the questions to ask to get the numbers you need, not just the obvious ones that are, say, on paper, or maybe your agent may be encouraging you to throw a question or two out. But before buying, the numbers need to be stress tested under realistic conditions because a deal only works if it still performs when everything is fully accounted for. That's when you know you've found something that's worth investing. So I'm going to end with this key takeaways. Two investment types, same purchase price, buying power, whatever you want to call it. Two different cash flows. Smart investors analyze the true expenses before choosing property types. So if you know your numbers, you can identify very quickly that four singles in this scenario is outperforming a 4-unit multifamily. Now, the 4-unit multifamily may be more appealing due to the social buildup around multifamily investing versus really seeing the numbers for what they are. In this case, the 4 single family home portfolio beats the fourplex straight up, apples to apples, numbers to numbers. So my encouragement to you guys is learn to ask better questions. If you're going into multifamily, plan your exit properly and really stress test the numbers before you make a decision. Know your true expenses before you take up that strategy.
Thanks, babe. So another thing I wanted to add in here too was you went very extensive on the benefits of the single family when selling versus the problems you are selling to an investor. You are selling to an investor pool which is smaller. I'd also like to say when you're buying, it's the same situation. You're going up against investors. Most investors are looking at these numbers. They know exactly what they're looking for versus the pool is so big in single family. Who are you going up against? A single family world? First time home buyers, someone who doesn't know anything better. Who would you rather go against in order to get even a better deal, right? they're going to be much more harder to negotiate with an experienced investor versus someone who has no idea and has just an issue and doesn't know, maybe doesn't even know how much their property is actually worth. Other thing that I like to encounter is take into consideration when buying a multifamily is where it is and the type it is, right? Most multifamilies are not in the best neighborhoods. Not like that. You're not seeing a lot of multifamilies in A neighborhoods or even B neighborhoods, right? So the type of tenant you're going to get, and it's likely going to be a 1-1 or a 2-1. And how many families want to live in a 1-1 or 2-1? Or if they do, how long will they stay there? So tenant turnover is very much higher than a single family. You don't hear people normally staying in a multifamily for decades, unless it's for a reason of Section 8 or something like that, right?
Or they're in Hawaii, California, these expensive markets where that's what they can afford. But in these cash flowing markets where we're using these real life examples, people are using them as transition homes in life. They're starting there, but they're not going to end there. They're wanting to move up into the single family home or buy their own home. So it's always temporary. At least that's the way I view the multifamily space. It's a transition between one phase of life to the next. But I did bring back this slide up because you brought up something very, very good around when you're dealing with multi, it's likely you're competing for the same property with a more savvy, skilled, informed investor. Now, this property was bought, in my opinion, too high, which is why the numbers were tight. And take away the additional expenses. If we just use our generic rule of thumb, if you don't know this, this is what it is. 1% rule of the purchase price, that's what your gross rental income should be, or at least close to it. By no means is it accurate, but that 1% rule of your purchase price, if you're producing that gross rental income, should ensure to some degree you're making decent positive net cash flow. In this slide shows the real purchase price, $500,000. However, the gross rent is not $5,000 a month. So it already sets it back, meaning this fourplex was overpaid for based off of performance just by following that 1% rule, take away the additional expenses versus the 4 single family homes, $125 a pop, renting for $1,200 a month. That's a lot closer to the 1% rule that could ensure higher and better gross income, which is why we got to that slide where it's completely different, right? Let me pull it up. The difference, right? It's a $1,500 swing by buying better. And it comes down to knowing your numbers. In the single family home department, yes, people can outbid you as owner users. And there's just simply a lot more single family homes for sale than are, say, a fourplex or multifamily. And the ones that are could be overpriced, looking for the sucker buyer who doesn't know their numbers or know the right questions to ask, which would then put that investor into a really tough spot, especially if they're focused on cash flow like we are. Versus a savvy investor may have came in and tried to buy it closer to 400,000. That way, in general, they can float that additional expenses that they didn't account for and still be better off because you're buying it at that lower price point.
Yeah. So why is it such a big deal, right? It's for multifamily, it's a super hot market. Everybody wants to have a multifamily, right? And which to me and CJ, it really is a big deal on because it's a hot market, we're not going to want to be in it unless we get a good deal. Because we're going to look for numbers. We're going to look for the thing that we're going to look for some sort of motivation. That's what an investor does versus it's the hot topic. So then investors know that they can run up that price and they won't actually be looking at these numbers. Another reason people seem to like multifamily is because it's a really nice thing to say. I have 4 doors. It's really cool to say versus I have 1, because most people will start off with a single family with 1. Not as cool. But if they get like 2 or 3 in these multifamilies, I have 12 doors now, right? Backyard barbecue talk is what I was told it was called. This is cool to have doors, but that doesn't mean you're making money. The numbers actually do have to work. And yeah. CJ and I have bought a lot of multifamily. Don't get us wrong. We have quite a few multifamilies in our past, and always looking.
Currently.
Yeah, there's a lot of great multifamily out there, but you got to know what is good versus what they're just trying to tout. The
And
actual.
that's where asking the better questions comes into play, because are you accounting for what I have on this slide, the additional cost that came with this particular 4 unit? Was this even an idea in your mind pre-presentation? Did you even think that these would be additional costs to this investment property? Gut level honest, you don't even put in the chat and be real with yourself. Man, I didn't think I would have to pay for utilities. That would be the tenant's job, right? Not necessarily. Not in multifamily. And these are the little things that compound. As you can see, the total expenditures jumped $1,000. That's a lot of money if you're looking for cash flow, right? The importance of this presentation is to make you aware of the things you may not even know to ask. So if you're coming in for this multifamily play, not saying don't do it, just double check your numbers.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of people come to us when they've owned these things and just so frustrated about not cash flowing. Why isn't it doing it? And when it comes down to it, it really is that they just don't know what to ask when they're doing their due diligence. They don't know what to look for. They don't know that they even have to pay for these things. We've had people come to us, right, babe? And they say things like, "Oh, I didn't even know. Oh, I was supposed to turn the utilities on," because they didn't even account for it in the first place. And then a couple months later, just like, "I don't understand." And then they just throw it up in the market again, hoping that someone else will buy it that doesn't understand their numbers either.
And the sad part is when somebody does an investment like this and isn't supported with community or has the savviness to figure out how to increase performance like multifamilies need to be increased in value, it's very likely you may make a little cash flow for the time of hold, but when you go to exit, you ain't selling it for 500,000 or half a mil. You're likely selling it for 400,000. So even if you held it for 10 years and you made $100,000 in cash flow, but you sold it for 400,000 a year later, what was that worth it for you for the 10-year wait period? It does matter on the skill set too, which is why we encourage newer investors taking on a new strategy like this buy and hold in a different city or in another state that you've never been to. Start off with something familiar. We call single family homes a starter packet, the starter property. It's very easy to go in and out of because or you are living in a single family home. You know of somebody who's living in a single family home. And there's always somebody buying a single family home. It's very easy to get out of it if you don't like it, which, based on my experience, a lot of people are catfished with multifamily because they simply they didn't know what they didn't know. It appeared to be this, and it turned out to be that.
We say this from experience too, because we're born and raised in an expensive market. So when we saw these multifamily numbers, we were just like, "Wow, that's so cheap." A multifamily in Hawaii that it doesn't go for $500,000. You can't even get a single family home for $500,000 in any
You had
sort
a townhome.
Everybody who was just on here that put your names, the Big Island, the Maui, Oahu, California, I'm sure you probably did look at that number and go, "Oh, wow, that's $500 for a fourplex. That's crazy. That's a lot. That's so cheap. I can totally do that."
Yeah.
But there are better options if you look at the numbers right. I mean, they can work too.
They're different options. And you can get to a point where you can do these fourplexes or multifamilies and it still makes sense. And it oftentimes requires a little bit more experience in the single family home department to hone in your skills and your understanding so you can do those perceivable bigger deals.
All right, so I'm going to bring this down. We'll open it up to some Q&A. You guys are welcome to ask anything. It doesn't have to be on this topic. We will go, what I like to always do is try to ask anybody if you have a very next step type of questions you'd like, or if it's topic related. And then if you have a random question about anything, I like to call step 27 of if I got this and this happened and then this happened, and then so what would I do about that? Feel free to answer those too. I personally don't think it's as helpful as what you could be doing for your very next step, but it is very informative, and other people might be thinking the same thing. So, by all means, ask your questions. And I get that the way CJ and I have talked about these multifamilies, there's a lot to think about, and it may it came across very easy, but at the same time, it could also be like, what? How does this work for me? Or is this? It's not really. Isn't that really simple? Can it actually apply to my situation? Then you're welcome to book a call. They're completely free, and we can help you walk through some scenarios and your numbers and figure out a game plan for yourself. I'll drop those again in the chat, and then we can continue on with whatever questions we may have in there. I was so excited to figure out this whole band thing. I was playing with it for the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Technology, they're so cool.
All right, so I'll address some of the questions that are popping up in the chat. Sakura Thompson, yeah, welcome. And it depends. If you hang around us a lot.
Wait, before you start, can you read it, because not everybody can read
okay. She says, thank you. This is very helpful. Are you able to speak on the cost of your program and the systems resources you provide for a beginner like yourself or herself? Great question. And you hang around us enough, you meet some of our people in our community, you're going to get the same answer. It really depends. I don't know your situation. I don't know what you're looking for. And we are not for everybody. We are very focused and committed to the buy and hold for cash flow strategy, which oftentimes, if you're on Oahu like we were, doesn't quite work in Hawaii. So you get to be open to different markets and markets that are thousands of miles away. So I would actually encourage you to book a call. It's free. There's no pressure. It's just a conversation around where are you at and can we even help you? This may not be a play for you, or it might be exactly what you're looking for. I wouldn't say we have enough time to be able to go in depth. Now, what systems resources we have everything you need to find success. We create I like to say this, we bring 80% of what you need to the table. The only thing you need to bring is the 20% we can't do for you, which, to sum it all up, is take action. If you're willing to take action and you are coachable and you're open to stretching yourself and getting uncomfortable, we can move you very quickly. Okay. Hope that helps. Hope to see you on a book call. Like I said, our team will help and support you in depth in what you need for what you're looking for. Hey, Sam. Let's see. He says, very good insight on other costs. Would these costs usually be under the PM, or would the PM charge us, the owner? Again, it depends how you have it structured. If you have a professional property manager in place, they will likely take care of all of it for you, but also bill you back. And I've also seen property management bill you back with, say, a surcharge or an upcharge, because it takes them time, energy, and resources to schedule out trash services, to do cleaning on a consistent basis in your common areas, to make sure that the landscapers are doing their job, to ensure your parking lot doesn't have potholes, and to do property checks and walks and so forth. So there are cases where property managers will do it with an uptick, and we discourage you doing it on your own. However, if you really want to lower your expenses, most people will try to outsource themselves, and that requires a lot of effort and time. So there's always a trade-off, right? Do you want to focus all this time and energy to save a few bucks, or do you want to go with convenience so you can focus on creating and growing a portfolio? PM usually takes charge of that. Lynn's asking, will you recommend C neighborhood for single family? It kind of comes down to, what do you classify C neighborhood to look like? Everybody has a subjective thinking around grading neighborhoods. So for those that don't understand this question, investors typically label a neighborhood A, B, C, or D. That's just how they label it. I never really understood it, That's what they use. So A is kind of like the higher end, owner occupant, predominantly better appreciation, no cash flow. B is a better area with a lot more appreciation, but your cash flow's tight. C is an area where you get less appreciation, but more cash flow. And D is kind of sort of the slumlord area. You'll get a lot of cash flow, little to no appreciation, and a lot of issues with your property. It's just a lot more work and headache. So for C neighborhood, if you were to be in that, I don't really need too much appreciation, but I want to maximize my cash flow, then yes, I would recommend C. And this is where those calls with the team members really help you to hone in. Do you really want to take on the risk of a DC for more cash flow, or do you want the benefits and upside of a BA neighborhood with little to no cash flow? It really depends. And having clarity around your personal position and situation, your finances, your buying power, your urgency, your goals, all these things matter to formulate what we call custom roadmap for you. So if you're open to it, Lynn, book a call. Let the team walk you through some scenarios of what a C neighborhood would look like. Will we have a replay? Alexander's asking, will you have a replay of the webinar? Yes. It will be posted on, is it on YouTube? It's on YouTube, right? It'll be on our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. And if you opted in and filled out some information, I believe we do send a link via text or email as a follow-up once this is completed. So I hope you're able to watch the replay, Alexander. I felt it was very valuable. It's something that's been asked for me to talk on for some time, and it will be out there at some point.
So if you guys want to have more questions, please keep dropping it in the chat. If not, I'm going to randomly start asking you questions, CJ. So
well, we got about 15 more minutes, so let's maximize our time.
Yeah, I think it would be a good idea to kind of go down the rabbit hole of like the neighborhood side. Like, and my first thought was, why are you looking at C neighborhoods? And so, kind of give them the good bads, the uglies for A's all the way down.
I summarize it in a nutshell, and I could go, I guess, in more weeds. And this is why it really matters on your situation and what you're looking to achieve. So let's just say I was talking with somebody in our community who's a corporate America type of a workforce, high paying profession, but doesn't have a lot of time. This person does not want to deal with the headaches of the C's and the D's for the cash flow. They rather capture the appreciation over time and be okay with $50 or $100 a month positive cash flow. That works for their specific situation. Now, if we flip that and we go with somebody like us, blue collar worker who was a UPS driver, decent income, but not like, whoa, like I'm good. Like it's enough to make a living, very tight in Hawaii, albeit we were very fixated on making the most cash flow for the least amount of money in, which then drew us to more of that C neighborhood. Over the years, more specifically for you, Lynn, over the years, I found myself straddling the B to C neighborhood class as my sweet spot. I call it a sweet spot. And if anybody's here that's in our active community, you could attest to this, and maybe you can confirm for those that aren't. But I talk a lot about my sweet spot being in that B to C area where I get decent cash flow, but also get the benefit of appreciation over time. Why is that important? Appreciation over time, these deals are great, but like you heard my story, we went from 0 to 90, and that's the $90 is what we needed to become financially free. Little did we know we didn't need $90 to become financially free. We need to be better investors who saw better opportunity in bigger deals. And the appreciation is the hidden benefit. One of the back of the 4 pillars is cash flow, which is your first and foremost. Then you have appreciation, you have depreciation, and then you have equity stacking, or your debt pay down from your tenant renting your property, paying your principal and interest payment. But when you learn how to stack your equity through the debt pay down plus appreciation, meaning timing it when it makes sense to sell, which is the power of our buy and hold strategy, you can capitalize on the value you've gained by holding a property long enough, positive cash flow, the market's gone up, and you had somebody pay down your debt. You have a lot more meat on the bone to roll that into a perceivable larger deal. And I wouldn't take this fourplex as an example, but maybe you buy a commercial property, and all of a sudden you go from $300-$400 a door to $3,000 to $4,000 a door. And that's kind of where it's very specific to your journey. How quickly do you want to build? How risk adverse are you? These B2C neighborhoods tend to appease most who want to do this strategy afar, like we did. When you start going into the D, it's a draw like multifamily. There's some hidden traps on the type of tenant class that you have, the lack of appreciation. Quite frankly, some of the D neighborhoods aren't even mortgageable with traditional financing, so your money is all in and that's it. And then on the opposite end, you have your A neighborhoods, no cash flow, negative cash flow. You might as well invest in Hawaii and California for that. You'll capture a lot more appreciation, but you got to hold and then afford to pay negative, be negative in cash flow for an extended period of time to eventually sell the equity that you get, which is not the ideal play. Because at what point can you not make a payment because you've been negative for so long? It's only a matter of time before you get into a financial position that it's hardship, and you may have to sell because of external factors, less an intentional strategy. So that was that more in the weeds, Jazz?
Yeah, and I feel like because we've been in it for so long, I think it's simplifying it would be a little bit more helpful. So A through D, this is how I like to see it. Like A neighborhoods are like those brand new builds, beautiful areas, gated. You have to have security to get in there. You know, those the nicer, more expensive types of properties. These are the good part about it is there's probably very little rehab or anything you have to do with it. It's brand new. It's a nice neighborhood, you know, all of those things, but they probably won't cash flow, right? B neighborhoods are more like a working class type of people. We lived in a B neighborhood, UPS driver, post office, right? Just you still have to work, probably two income, but you know, still safe, good, you know, safe, good. You can still walk down the street and you feel like you don't feel like you're going to get shot, right? C neighborhoods more well, I mean, even
Older,
B, yeah, they're older homes, 1970s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, you know, stuff like that. Older,
1900s in some markets.
yeah, older homes. Maybe they're a little bit more run down. Maybe like not white collar. What is it? Blue collar. So maybe they're making they're not like just barely making ends meet type of thing, but they can still pay their rents and you know you can still walk around the streets, but you would look around. You know, you don't feel you would feel safe that your kids can still run around, but you'd monitor them pretty safely anyway. That I consider that like a C. And then D's, I like to say you wouldn't go there at night, or you would have bars. That's one of the ways we can tell people have bars on the window, or the convenient. You know, if you see a lot of liquor
Liquor stores,
stores,
pawn
convenient,
shops,
yeah,
cash advances.
Section 8s. You know, a
Yeah.
lot of the people who are struggling. Our property manager, when when we had quite a few D neighborhood properties, he'd walk around with a gun in his pocket at all times. That's a D neighborhood, you know. So this is really, if you want to simplify it in that way.
Okay. So
Um,
Lynn's question was, she's looking for cash flow, but worried about war zone and more turnover tenant. Then you would likely want to find that sweet spot between B to C. And then Sakura, hope that answered it. Jazz went in detail. If you like B neighborhoods, Lynn, they have good benefit. You're just going to concede a little on cash flow. See, Alexander's asking, what state will you advise to invest in? I'm in California, and I do have a few rental properties, but lately I do not want to invest here because it's not landlord friendly. That's a big kicker. So maybe a market you want to look into or a state you want to look into would first start with what's a landlord friendly state. It's one of the key pillars of advice we give when somebody joins the community is pick a market and look for a market that supports landlord friendly laws. Because if you have an eviction in California, and I'm not sure if you have, I personally not own in California, and I've worked with people who did. It can take 6 months to a year to get somebody out who's non-paying because they really protect the tenants. There's rental caps. There's all these things that discourage you to be a landlord in the state of California. It's similar in Hawaii. So you might want to start there and see what markets are out there first if that's where you're wanting to shift from.
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that, like, when we first started, the biggest reason, first thing everybody does, right, and that's no difference from us. We looked around our home state and whatever was nearby. CJ was determined he wanted to see, touch, and feel, even though he didn't know what he was looking at. He still needed to see it, as if he did, right? And I was completely open to the idea because I didn't know anything. But then I looked at that and I talked to people, and they were telling me about all of the terrible laws that Hawaii had, and how hard it was to get, if you did have to do an eviction, it would take forever, and they were always on the tenant side. All these horror stories started coming out, just like California. And it's just not just that, but then the numbers were just ridiculous. You right, is that average price of a property in Hawaii or even California is like $1 million just for a single family home, right? So you have to have $250,000 down payment just so you can get a negative cash flow of like $2,000. Yay! How many properties are like that can you get? Right? That's kind of what went through my head. Like, these numbers, they just don't cash flow. It is so hard and so much competition because all these experienced flippers are trying to buy them and sell them off, right? So how am I supposed to find anything that actually puts money in my pocket, because I can't take negative, that kind of money. We didn't have it. We weren't going to buy 5 of those just to be $10,000 negative or more and hold it for 10 years so I can eventually sell it to, that's just not what we were thinking. If you have that, great. That's a great strategy. If you've got more than enough money just bleeding out of you and you just need to find somewhere to park it for a tax benefit, that's great. That just wasn't us.
Okay. Sakura asks, do I have a team near Clearwater, Florida? No, I don't. And we train you how to build your team properly. So that goes into Sam K's question. How do you find and vet PM contractors, et cetera, from out of state? Well, you start first with coattail riding others who are doing it and start looking for referrals. The very easiest, fastest way to get connected in a market you don't know anybody in. And then it's a skill set. And the skill set comes from the repetition of interviewing, knowing how to ask the right questions. No different than with the fourplex. How do you ask the right questions to get that additional expense sheet and the breakdown of those numbers? You get to learn how to ask a property manager additional questions to get clarity on, do they even work in that C neighborhood or B neighborhood Lynn wants to be in? What if they are specialists in only A neighborhoods? Do you want to work with a property manager who is not gifted or skilled or an expert in a C or B neighborhood, but they focus in on A? If you don't know to ask certain questions, you could miss things that could eventually cost you a large amount of money. Same with contractors, real estate agents, lenders, insurance providers, the whole nine. So how do you handle maintenance from afar? Have a built team. Learn how to build a team and execute. Have them do the legwork for you. I am not handy, so I wouldn't know what to do. And over the years, we learned how to lead a team from afar and got knowledge from everybody who we worked with. Is there a repair threshold? That's a property manager question. It varies from them. Seen some that there is no threshold, and we've seen some where, okay, at over $300, we'll ask you for permission. Yeah, so that answers that question. Then said California's getting really bad with cash flow. Yep. Is there a team in Reno, Nevada? I lived there part of the year. Does the numbers work for you in Reno, Nevada? So if you're looking for cash flow, do the simple rule. So this applies to everybody who's asking questions, especially like Alexander looking for advice on what state. Use the 1% rule. Use that as a filter. So if a house in California costs $1 million, it needs to rent for 10 grand for it to be somewhat in the vicinity of positive cash flow. There's some variables we can't control, but in a nutshell, 1%. If you're looking in Reno, what is the average home price? Does the rent support 1% of that? And if not, I'm not sure if you want to build a team in Reno just because you go there part of the year.
Yeah, that was a big part of why CJ and I had such a disconnect, right, when we first started too. He wanted to see it. He wanted it to be near where he was at. And we get a lot of clients like that come in and they're just like, I want this. This place needs to work for me because I have family there, or I used to live there, or I do live there, or I was, it's the nearest place I can feel like it could work for me, right? But those aren't things that you're thinking logically and seeing the numbers, right? You're feeling it emotionally. Because if you think about it, if you were just because you were living there, is that a good or bad thing to have a property there? I mean, do you really know what you're looking at? What would you do if you were there? Would you be doing all of the work? Would you be doing all the rehabs? Would you be property managing it yourself, or would you have a team member? Hopefully, you would have a team member because that's how you scale. So why does it have to be put into a certain box of like it has to be in this area, and I'm going to force it to work in this area? Versus now you have the entire United States to look at, and what numbers will work for you, and now you've given yourself more options, right? That's the idea behind it. And then when you're looking at places, this is a common thing that we hear a lot too. Is my family lives there. I know somebody who lives there. That's not a logical choice again, right? Because is your family member or the person a property manager, a contractor, an agent, someone who knows real estate, someone who's built a portfolio in any way? If that's a no, then why would you want that person keeping an eye out on your properties, right? You want a professional doing those things. And that's the idea of building the right team instead of just giving it to family, right? That's how real businesses are built, through numbers, through getting the right team members on the bus so you can drive in the right direction.
So there's pros and cons to investing in a city you don't live in. Pro, you can't do anything about it. Con, you can't do anything about it. It works both ways. It's really the development of skill that makes you successful, whether in your backyard or in a city you've never been to. So what we encourage investors, especially newer ones who are looking to get started, is start with that very next step. Team building isn't often the very next step. It could simply be identifying your market or your strategy. If buy and hold's not for you, what is your strategy? Because when you're clear around your strategy, oftentimes it filters out and magnifies markets that make sense for you. Then we can start going into the creation because you know what you want and where it's located. All right, let's see. Next question from Lynn. Do you recommend turnkey or rehab for out-of-state investments? Typically, if it's your first property in a market you've never been to or a team you've never used before, I suggest, and it's up to you, but I suggest just for the sake of getting a proof of concept to do something that doesn't require a lot of effort to ensure you have the proper support in place. Turnkey would likely be the easiest road in to the market to get your feet wet and then develop from there into more of that BRRRR strategies is what I think you're alluding to, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, rehab side to out-of-state investing. Not a bad play, and proof of concept is easier when you don't have to do a lot of work. Let's see. Awesome. Okay. Do we have any last questions? We are at the top of the hour. We'd be happy to field a few more if there are, and give it a minute or two for it to pop up in the comments. And if not, we will call it a night. And Jazz, let's get back to our kids.
That is the beauty of what we do, right? We work on our time and what we want to do. And I want to be here with you. This is fun.
All right. Doesn't look like we have any other questions popping in. Those of you who have booked a call, really just be open. Come with all your questions. Come with your vision, your goals, your desire. Whether buy and hold out of state for cash flow is your strategy or not, our team is set up to support you with your next best step. So I highly encourage you attend, if not book, if you haven't already. And if not, we'll be on in 2 weeks. And this is going to be a very consistent thing. We are looking for feedback on presentations you want to see or topics you guys want us to cover. We're always open to it. Can't guarantee it's going to be something that's queued up the very next call, but we're open to it. So this was a request back in January. I finally got to it in April, and I'd be happy to hear more requests if it's about how do you vet teams or building in teams, how to pick a market. These are all things that we can work around. Give us the feedback and take your next step. So I appreciate you guys jumping on. me and Jazz are going to sign off, and we hope to see you again on a future remote rentals workshop, virtual workshop. Have a great night, guys.
Good night.